Hey guys, Rachel Cruze here for another Facebook Live. I love doing these. And YouTube. You guys were streaming on YouTube this time. So YouTubers out there, welcome. This is so fun. It's so fun to be able to connect with you guys and talk about money and answer your questions live. It's kind of like, I was going to say like the Dave Ramsey show, but not really because we're on the internet. But I want you to ask your questions because this subject tonight we're going to talk about is getting your spouse on board when it comes to budgeting. So if you have any questions, send them my way and I'll be answering them. But just to kind of kick us off, I was thinking through points of, okay, how do you do this? Because for a lot of people that they're on board, so if you're watching this, it's probably the fact that you're the one on board when it comes to money and personal finance and you're all about, getting ready to budget or get out of debt. And maybe your spouse is the one that's reluctant. So how do you get them on board? Well, my first piece of advice is to tell them the why. Because if you just say, oh my gosh, sweetie, okay, we're going to track every expense and we're going to just budget all the time and I'm so excited about budgeting and that means you can't have any fun and we're just going to budget. It's your spouse probably is going to be like, what? I'm going to go shopping or go to Home Depot. See ya. Like, what? Like, no, budgeting, what is this? So you have to really explain the why. And so first and foremost, explaining to them that a budget doesn't mean that their freedom is limited. So a budget doesn't limit your freedom. A budget gives you freedom. It gives you permission to spend. It gives you permission to be intentional with your money and where it goes and ultimately to win. And then maybe there's other reasons why you want to budget. Maybe you feel like you're working so hard and you have nothing to show for it. And it's like, we just feel like the money comes in and the money goes right back out and you are doing your taxes this time of year and you look back and you're like, where did all of our money go in 2016? Like, we made all this money. Where did it go? Maybe you're feeling that. Maybe, ladies out there, you're feeling like a little bit insecure about the money situation. Maybe even a little scared of like, okay, are we doing okay? I don't even know. We don't talk about money a lot. And a budget would give you a really clear picture. So no matter if you're the wife or the husband, spouse, whichever one you are, explain the why to the spouse that may be reluctant to really get them on board. And hopefully if there is a healthy dialogue and a marriage there, they're going to listen and you're going to be able to talk about it and kind of come to an agreement. So that's number one, explain the why. Number two, don't try to change your spouse. And this is always difficult, especially if you're more of the nerd in the relationship and you love budgeting and you heard that that I'm doing a Facebook Live on budgeting right now and you are so excited. Well, you're probably the nerd if that's you. If your budget is pulled up right now, you're probably the nerd. And your spouse, we call the free spirit, who's a little bit more relaxed, a little bit more like, oh, whatever you want to do, it's fine, no big deal. And the idea for budgeting for them, it feels like they're constrained. It feels like they can't have any fun. And I'll be honest, I was that spouse for a while. Winston is actually kind of more of the nerd in our relationship. He enjoys doing the budget more than I do, even though I talk about this all the time, which is funny. But I'm naturally more of a free spirit. Details and that kind of thing really stress me out. And so I feel like if Winston came in and like made me do all this thing, this regimented system and that if, you have to be this way, you can't be a free spirit, you start to feel like, oh my gosh, you're changing who I am. And so I would say to you as the spouse who is on board budgeting, don't try to change your free spirit, okay? Embrace it. And maybe you are the free spirit and you're watching this and you want to budget. Your nerd will probably love it and you don't have to change the nerd because they're going to love budgeting. But just don't try to change your spouse. There is a balance, though, in maturity when it comes to finances, right? I mean, you can't just like hoard money and save all the time and just like live this strict life and have no fun because that means you're going to have no life. And then over here, you can't just spend into oblivion and not care at all because then you're going to end up broke. So there has to be a healthy balance in general, but your natural tendency, don't try to change your spouse when it comes to their natural tendency. I would also say number three, my third tip is just to really embrace, not only who they are, but embrace what they enjoy doing and tell them, hey, that doesn't mean that just because we're budgeting doesn't mean that we can't have any fun. Because in every budget, each spouse needs to have their own line item. Now, depending on where you are, if you're getting out of debt or saving up for an emergency fund, that dollar amount next to that spouse's name and your name may not be that high right now because you're putting a lot of money towards paying off debt. But you want some kind of freedom there, some kind of dollar amount where you say, hey, for instance, I can go to Target, buy my 14th bottle of hairspray for the month and not feel like I have to text Winston and be like, I'm buying more hairspray. I have allotted money and I can go and I can spend it. And so really having that freedom to let them still do what they want to do and have a little bit of that freedom is so key in the budget. And that's realistic, you guys. I mean, it really is. Life is going to happen. You're going to be running errands. You're going to need to do things for yourself. So have that money allotted and budgeted. And so hopefully that will help get your spouse on board. And last but not least, I would say help them find a fancy way to do budgeting, which is what I like to call Every Dollar. It's a free budgeting app that we have. And this, honestly, Winston and I, for so long, we had a sheet of paper that was in our coffee table, and that was our budget. And we got it out every month. It had pencil on it, so we could erase numbers and stuff. But for the most part, it stayed pretty consistent. And we budgeted with that sheet of paper in our coffee table for a few years, a pretty long time. And then Every Dollar came out, which is a free budgeting app that we have. You can go to rachelcruze.com/everydollar and check it out. And it's, if you have iPhone or Android, you can download it. And it's a free budgeting app, and you and your spouse can have the same login information. That's what Winston and me do. And when we sit down and we do the budget together, we have the budget pulled up on our phones. It's the same account. And even if we have to change something in the budget, which we do almost every month, I'll text them and be like, hey, I didn't spend as much on Amelia's birthday that I thought I did, or, whatever it was. I'm going to lower this category and up this category. Are you cool? And he's like, yeah, that's great. And we can just communicate and update it, and it's just right there, and it's free. It's free. And it's amazing just to be able to have that communication, and the fact that we're like all obsessed with these, aren't we? Our phones, we love our phones. And the fact that your budget is right here, and it's addicting. I'm telling you, as a free spirit, now that I have Every Dollar, and I do Every Dollar Plus, which is where they actually can pull your transactions from your bank, which is so worth it. I kind of get excited every morning because I refresh it, and the little bubble pops up, and they're like, you have 3 new transactions. And then I drag and drop it to the category. I don't know, maybe I'm turning into a nerd, but my free spirit part of me loves it. It kind of is actually pretty fun, and it keeps track of everything. So there are some ways, hopefully, to get your spouse on board, you guys. Number 1, tell them the why. Why do you want to budget? Number 2, don't try to change your spouse. Number 3, embrace the fact that they still probably want to have fun, so leave some money in there for them and yourself to be able to have that freedom. And number 4, download Every Dollar. And so, again, for this Facebook Live, I'm going to take your questions. And they've been coming in. I had my phone under my leg, and it was, buzzing. So I was like, okay, I know there's questions coming in. So let me look. Morgan asks, how do I keep my spouse accountable without nagging? That's a great question. I think it's all about the attitude and the expectation that you have going into those conversations. I mean, if it's this constant, I think a nag is like a complaining, even the tone of your voice where it's like, babe, or why aren't you doing this, right? It's like almost this complaining feeling, and you can hear the nag in your voice is difficult. And so I think when you're sitting down, though, and you really are concerned about the money and you really do want to do a budget, sitting down and having an honest conversation, mature adult to mature adult, and saying that, this is not going to be a very fun conversation because I don't enjoy talking about budgeting, but I do want to start doing this, and I want to have this conversation with you. So let's prepare emotionally together that we're about to have this conversation, right? And talk. And so I think, honestly, it sounds silly, but the tone of your voice is huge. And actually preemptively being intentional with those conversations, and that it's not this constant just jab at your spouse, all the time, because I feel like that can be nagging. So sitting down and actually having a conversation, and hopefully they're receptive to that, and they want to listen and be on the same page as well. But if they don't, go back to the Facebook Live and listen to my 4 tips. Maybe that'll help you too. Anthony O'Neill asks, Anthony, are you watching my Facebook Live right now? Oh my gosh. So, oh my gosh, I'm so thrown off at Anthony. This is so funny. Okay. When should my fiance Tyra and I start budgeting together since we're about to get married? Anthony. Actually, I knew that, Anthony. Well, that's a great question. So for you engaged couples out there, budgeting together is key. And so here's the deal. You don't want to combine your finances until after you're married. Because yes, everyone has good intentions of getting married when the engagement happens, obviously. But life can still happen. And if you start paying on your boyfriend or your fiance's debt or vice versa, and then the marriage is off, well, then you've spent 10 grand paying off his credit card debt, and he's pieced out, or you've pieced out, or, you're 10 grand now in the hole of not even your own finances. So no, don't combine your finances until after the ring's on, when the pastor says, You are now husband and wife. You say, I do. Walk down the aisle and combine those finances on the way to the reception if you want to. That's what you can do. But until then, don't do it. But budgeting together is a great thing, I think, to do to practice. Actually, our premarital counselor in one of our sessions sat down with Winston and I, and I'll never forget, she was like, yeah, she's like, you guys, let's talk about money, and, starting that conversation, the premarital counseling. She was like, I really think you guys, you need to sit down and do kind of a mock budget together. I was like, did my dad pay you to tell me that? Because Winston knew I didn't want to budget and I didn't like budgeting. But it was good for us to sit down and be like, okay, realistically, like, here's what I spend on clothes. Here's what, here it is. And just kind of a mock budget. Not that you're going to live by it necessarily, but at least putting that expectation out there. So that's for all you engaged couples out there. Gina asks, every dollar is working wonders for us at the moment. I'm so glad. Still using the free version. Curious what the paid version has to offer. Okay, so Every Dollar Plus does have a paid version, and that's what I was telling you about, that you actually can connect to your bank. And so with the free version, you can actually manually type in your transactions. So if you were at Target and you spent $40, who spends $40 at Target? We spend like $400. Let's just be honest, ladies, right? You go in for mascara and you walk out spending $400. No, not really, but it's what it feels like. Yeah, so you go in and you're like, okay, I spent $40. And so you can just you can type it in every dollar, Target $40, and you can drag it to whatever category you want. But with Every Dollar Plus, you are connected to your bank. So after you swipe your debit card, after it goes through your bank and they process it and everything, then it shows up in the Every Dollar app, which means you don't have to type in anything. It just shows up, and it just shows up Target $40, and then you can drag and drop it, which is absolutely fantastic. So it really is worth it, because unless you're very diligent about typing in your transactions, which some people are, and that's great. But for me, on the go, you're moving, you're doing stuff. It's just, it's constant. This keeps up with it 100%. And the amount of money you save by budgeting is well worth, what you would pay for Every Dollar Plus. So I am an Every Dollar Plus advocate for sure. Janet asks, how do you convince a spender to slow down? Oof. Well, Janet, you're asking the right gal, because I am a spender. And it's something that kind of takes time to learn. And the way I look at it as a spender is the budget kind of gives you that permission. So it's like, literally just last night, I wake up in the middle of the night. Now that I'm pregnant, I just feel like I just don't sleep very well. And so I was up from like 1 to 4, and I was bored. So what did I do? I started maternity clothes shopping. And so I was online, and we have 2 weddings this summer. I'm like, I need a dress for these evening weddings, because I'm going to be massive and huge in my 3rd trimester. And so I need a new dress. And as a spender, I found a dress I liked, and I make quick decisions anyways. And I was like, well, that's what I like. I ordered it, and I ordered it in the middle of the night. But I had the money. I checked every dollar. I really did. I checked every dollar. I was like, okay, there's enough money in my clothing line item, so I'm going to just get it. So the budget kind of gives the spender boundaries and limits of what they can spend, but it gives them the freedom to still spend if they want to, and that's how I feel. But over time, I think once you start budgeting and you really start focusing on spending your money wisely and actually slowing down and taking the emotion out of it, and not like buying purchases in the middle of the night like I did. Probably not a wise move. I hope I like the dress. But what it does is it forces you to kind of grow up and mature a little bit and just say, okay, do I really need this? Is this what I need? And it makes you think twice, because you realize, out of that clothing line item, that amount of money is about to be deducted. Do I want to spend that money elsewhere? It makes you kind of second guess and think through your purchases more when you are budgeting. So all that to say, for the spender, if you can get them on board budgeting, it's huge, because they have the freedom to be able to spend and kind of spontaneously spend within that category, that limit and that boundary. But then at the same time, as they do it month after month, they're going to start to really think through their purchases more, to think, okay, is this really where I want to spend my money? And that's the other great thing about budgeting and using your money, is you're using cash, essentially, is what that is. It's your money coming out of your account, versus using a credit card, because credit cards, you're going to end up spending way more, statistically speaking, than you would with your actual money. So even budgeting forces you to spend with your own money, and that helps tremendously, because you're budgeting your income. Let's see. Renee asks, we seem to run out of our grocery budget and take from other categories that we didn't use from. Is this normal or a good idea? Well, Renee, I would say that the food category is the biggest budget buster for everyone. I know for me, for sure. our grocery budget. Yeah, it's tough. And even our out to eat, sometimes it's like, oh my gosh, we're bumping up against it. It feels like we always spend our food. So what I would say is if you're if month after month, after 2 or 3 months, if you are still, taking money out from other categories to fund your grocery, then your grocery budget is too small. So you need to up it. Because the idea with the budget is you want to be realistic. It's not fair for you or ideal to put, oh, okay, well, we're only going to spend X amount of dollars, even though I probably know it's going to be a little bit more than that. No, if it's going to be more than that, just go ahead and budget for it and plan it. And so that's what Winston and I do. And that's what we've had to do. And it's tough because it's like, oh man, like, I hate seeing that we spend this much on groceries, but we do. It's realistic. And so I'd rather you be realistic and go ahead and up your grocery budget a little bit. And then, hey, maybe you get to the end of the month and you haven't spent all your grocery budget money. And maybe you decide to move that to another category or take that extra cash and pay off debt or whatever you decide to do with it. But the idea is to be realistic. So is it normal? Very normal, especially for the food category. But if you see that it's been a habit and it's been a pattern month after month, then up your budget, your food category, because you want your budget to be realistic. Amanda asks, my husband doesn't like to do the budget with me. Any ideas on how to get, or how to present our budget to him in a way that he, I should open my phone. Sorry, Amanda. In a way that he'll want to be more involved. Well, again, at the beginning, I talked about this. I think it's huge, coming, since Amanda asked this, I'm assuming you're a woman and your husband is the one you said was reluctant. And so I would say, talk to him about your why. And I think that's big. And just to say, hey, this is why I want to sit down and budget. I know it doesn't sound fun. It's not exciting. Like, you're probably not super excited about it either, and that's okay. But say, hey, this is something that I really value and I really want to do. And hopefully he hears that. And I think the hard thing about spouses being reluctant, if you're doing it, again, in a healthy way and you're presenting yourself in that sense that he can reciprocate. If he constantly says no, 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 and there are some spouses out there that no matter what, they refuse to budget or they refuse to get on board financially, then when it gets to that point, I hate to say it, but you have more of a marriage problem than a money problem because there's major miscommunication that's not happening, or there's not mutual respect of you guys like being on the same team. I mean, there's some other issues going on. But usually they're reluctant because it's the idea of like, oh, a budget, ew, that means that we can never go out to eat and we can never go on vacation and we're gonna have to live this boring life. So usually the bad implications of budgeting that are not true come to that spouse's mind, so you can really talk through it and the why behind it. All right, so let's do one more from Carrie. Do you still use a cash budget? Yes, I do. I'll be honest, during travel season, which is what I am now, it's tougher for me to do the cash because I have my wallet, but I don't like to carry my wallet around all across America with all my grocery and clothing money in it. So sometimes in travel season, I'm not as diligent, but for sure when I'm home consistently, I do because it's great. And so using every dollar, a lot of people have this question, how do you still cash out categories and do every dollar? So this is what I do. So for our food, we do our out to eat and our grocery, and then I do my clothes and my personal. So what I do is, so say I'm making this number up, so don't hold me to this, but say my personal line item is $75, okay? So every month I get $75 to spend on me. I cash that out and put it in my wallet, in my clip, and say, okay, this is my personal. So when the bank transaction comes through for $75 deducted out of my account, I drag that transaction all the way to my personal line item in every dollar. So it shows I have no money in my personal in every dollar because I've already taken out that cash and my cash is in my wallet. So it takes like one extra little step, but it's not bad at all. And I love using cash because, and I talk about this a lot, but it's true. Cash is emotional. You feel cash. And the idea that I have to trade cash in to receive something else, that whole exchange is huge for me. And as a spender, I think twice so much more about my purchases. So if I had cash last night in the middle of the night buying my maternity dress at 3 a.m. I may not have bought it if I felt that cash right there. It's so much easier just to like swipe a card, and it's more convenient too. Again, that's why during crazy seasons of life, sometimes it's just easier to swipe a debit card. But when you have tangible cash, it's great. So I do use still cash in my budget because it does help me, and you can still use every dollar while doing it as well. And I have a wallet. You can go to rachelcruze.com too, and it's my cash. It's my clip system is what I call it, because for so long I carried around envelopes with those categories, and I could never carry around a cute wallet. So I was like, well, why don't I just design a wallet and create a wallet in the clip system? So I did. So you can check that out as well. Well, thank you guys so much on a Monday night. I think Dancing with the Stars is on, and you may be missing it, and you're watching this video. I know Bachelor and Bachelorette are not on. They're filming right now. Don't worry, I'm a big fan of that show. So Monday nights are very precious. I get it. You're with your family, or you're at home after a long day of work, wherever you are. I so appreciate you tuning in and asking questions. And I know there were some questions we couldn't get to, so hopefully we'll do this again. But thanks you guys so much. And remember, being intentional with your money is so important. It may not always be the most exciting thing in the world at the time, but gosh, in the long run, it will do you well. And doing a budget, using things like EveryDollar, it's going to help. Remember, a budget doesn't limit your freedom. A budget gives you freedom.